Some of you may not know me. I'm Susan Anderson, and I'm an abandonment specialist, and I'm here with Ibia Perdon, who is my personal assistant. I thought I'd give you a little background about what the workshop is about. Some of you may have taken one of my online workshops, or you might have taken a workshop at Esalen in Big Sur, or Kripalu in the Berkshires, or a number of other beautiful settings where the workshops are run. But those of you who haven't, I think it's important to explain that the workshops are about healing the primal wound of abandonment. This is that cumulative wound that's been collecting since childhood that just kind of hangs out within us universally, and it's easily triggered. So the people that come to the workshops are people who come from all sorts of different adult triggers. They might be going through a breakup, which means they're in a severe emotional crisis. The breakup very often brings people to their knees, and it's just overwhelming in the pain. Or they might be dealing with a more chronic type of abandonment, where maybe their parents were alcoholic or something in their childhood has given them a chronic feeling of insecurity, and they have lots of self-sabotage, and things prevent them from reaching their potential as a human being. The insecurity interferes in their relationships. They have a very active outer child, which is the part that breaks your diet and gets attracted to all the wrong people. In fact, a lot of people come because they have a pattern of being attracted to the unavailable. And when someone is available, they lose attraction. They have to be in pursuit mode in order to feel the love. Or some people come because they're so afraid of abandonment that they avoid relationships altogether, and they have a terrible feeling that they'll never find love, that they'll die bereft of love and human connection. Or even things that don't seem directly related to the abandonment wound, such as hoarding and cluttering. People come with that kind of a symptom because it stems from very early abandonment and self-abandonment. Cluttering and not living our best life is one of the ways that we abandon ourselves. But the workshop deals with all of these issues, and each person works on their own issues during the workshop. But it really is talking about the taproot of abandonment, the primal abandonment wound that underlies all of these adult triggers.
Why is this primal wound of abandonment so painful?
What makes it painful is that it is the primal fear. And when we have an experience that kind of triggers that fear, we know that it's a really terror that we're talking about, the primal fear of abandonment. And then also shame. And shame is something that really makes us feel, if we go through a breakup, it's what makes the breakup so particularly painful, because it triggers that shame of not being worthy. Rejection will definitely trigger that feeling, and the primal fear of never being able to be worthy of a long connection. It's what makes going through a divorce so painful. The shame and the primal fear. It's what going through grieving a death. It's the pain involved in complicated grief, that all of that primal abandonment and shame have to be resolved within the relationship for the person to move forward into the normal stages of grief. It's what makes losing a job so painful. The rejection that may be involved, the feelings of inadequacy, the shame of the feeling of failure. And when we lose our sense of purpose, for instance, the mother who gives up her profession in order to raise her children and suddenly isn't feeling good about herself and feels more shame and more fear of abandonment, which is a vague feeling that just kind of occurs to her on occasion. And then she may or may not realize that by having been working and being, let's say, the best pediatrician in the clinic, she was compensating for feeling unworthy. And when that occupation is taken away, suddenly the primal fear and the shame come back.
Are these universal, the fear and the shame?
We all have shame. We all have primal fear because we're all human. We were all born. Um, Someone like Brene Brown, for instance, has been making it possible for more and more people to really talk about our shame. Shame has been very unconscious and hidden. It's kept secret within the personality. But more and more people are okay admitting to their shame. And we are learning how universal it is by sharing it with other people, of course. Um, Abandonment and shame are flip sides of the same coin. Um, Abandonment fear is the fear of losing the connection, and shame is feeling unworthy of the connection. So they're really one coin, just the two different sides. Um, Unresolved abandonment and shame lead to self sabotage. It's all about self abandonment. How do we abandon ourselves? But by not following our dreams, by grabbing for a quick fix instead of following our goals. Um, and the thing is about shame and the primal fear is that they're not cognitive. They're they're structural. They're within us. They're part of the primal wound. So it's not as if we can get rid of them because they're not pus. It's not like a boil that we break and then get rid of the pus. It doesn't go away if we have a catharsis, which is psychology's kind of way of dealing with pus. We here's all this pus, this unconscious stuff, and we bring it out and we express it and cry and scream and tell our therapist or our friends, and we get rid of it. But the primal fear and primal shame, these things are structural. We can't get rid of them. They're not pus. They're part of who we are.
And how is the workshop helpful?
Well, the workshop works very hard on dealing with the mechanism that keeps us on a hamster wheel, spinning and spinning, and getting nowhere. The workshop works at reversing self-abandonment. Going to therapy in a traditional setting or taking DBT, which is very helpful, or engaging in trauma reduction therapies. These things can be very helpful. We can move mountains within ourselves and progress in all kinds of ways. But the frustrating fact is that the primal wound of abandonment, fear, and shame, in spite of all these efforts, remain intact.
So if traditional methods don't get to the taproot, what does work?
Well, the actual approach to healing abandonment involves deconstructing the powerful force of attachment. Think about the animal kingdoms. The force of attachment is what promotes the procreation of the different species. The mammalian kingdom has tremendous attachment energy that keeps mammals reproducing and staying within family groupings or staying within couple groupings. The force of attachment in the human race is tremendous. It is very, very strong. With abandonment, the force of attachment, which seeks an object, right? The force of attachment is seeking the other person, the other animal. It seeks an object, but with abandonment, that force of attachment is thwarted in its attempt to connect with the object. So when you love someone and that person pulls away, the force of attachment toward that person is powerful, and then there's no person there because he or she has pulled away. That's where the pain comes from, and it triggers the shame of not being worthy, and the primal fear of that will always be alone and will die alone and so forth. these primal feelings are triggered by the thwarting of the attachment energy. So what does work is working with that force of attachment which has been thwarted. It won't go away. We can't get rid of it. It's not giving up the force of attachment. So we give it something new to attach to. And that something is the self. And the self is a relationship with an object that can never betray us. It can't abandon us. It can only give us what we need. Now, we do abandon ourselves. We do betray ourselves if we're not on top of this with special tools that keep us giving ourselves the nurturance and the love that we need. But it works with that force of attachment to give it the object that we need to be healthy.
And what happens in the workshop?
Well, there's a lot of instruction and a lot of insights and a lot of experiential practice of the different exercises and tools. The exercises are physical therapy for the brain. And so in the workshop within a group setting, we practice these exercises and then share so that there's a lot of reinforcement. It's quite a profound experience. And we create in the workshops a very safe space. It's very confidential and private. And of course, people have the right to share at whatever level they feel comfortable with. Everybody's an adult. They're all on their own recognizance. And the workshop provides all of these different components.
And what are the main benefits that people will get from your workshop?
The one of the benefits is sort of a byproduct, which is shame reduction, not shame elimination. That's not possible. It's a human universal that we have as part of what makes us human. But we can reduce the toxicity of the shame. But the other benefit is that people are equipped with take-home tools. They can go home with a full program that they can undertake and include in their daily regimen or their weekly regimen that will actually be very life-changing. But even if people don't use the take-home tools on an ongoing basis, the workshop is provocative enough and the sharing is significant enough and the learning experience that there are sort of emotional smart bombs delivered in the form of insights and, emotional doggy bags taking those insights home. But even if people have an outer child whose favorite activity is procrastination, and they have all the good intentions in the world of leaving the workshop and using the take-home tools for the rest of their lives, they're going to change their regimen and they're going to build these things, the very brief, short things to do every day or twice a week or whatever. They have all the good intentions, but outer child procrastinates and avoids, and they never get to do it. So even if people take the workshop with good intentions to follow the program after the workshop, and they don't do it because outer child is too strong, there's still a bump up. There is still a huge benefit because the self-esteem, maybe a few months after the workshop, people notice it. They actually do feel better about themselves and they have a greater sense of initiative.
And what advice do you have for the new members?
Well, okay. I would suggest that even though your outer child may not want you to do this, that you do familiarize yourself with the books or the articles or the videos so that you have an idea about what wonderful experience you're about to have and you can be warmed up to it. And clear your schedule so that whether you're attending one of the online workshops or a workshop at one of the beautiful settings, that you're completely available to participate in it fully, and also just get ready for a life-changing experience.
Thank you for
Thank you.
explaining the workshop.
Thank you.